I'm here with Diana Kirton, the chair of the Hawke's Bay Power Consumers Trust. Kia ora, Diana, and welcome.
Morning, and nice to see you again.
Nice to see you
too. It
has been a while, yes. Firstly, for those of us, or those who don't know, what is the Hawke's Bay Power Consumers Trust?
Okay, and it's a good chance to understand it. The Trust holds the shares in Unison on behalf of the power consumers throughout Hawke's Bay, which is generally the Napier-Hastings electoral boundaries. So the trusts came about in the 1990s with the electricity reforms under Max Bradford, where they separated out the retailers from the generators and the distributors.
Yeah.
So that's where, as was known at the time, Hawke's Bay Power Limited came into being, which was the distributor, the lines company for Hawke's Bay. And then in 2003, they rebranded as Unison Networks Limited.
Okay, and who are the shareholders of the trust? Are those property owners or are those anyone who pays electricity?
Anyone whose name is on the electricity bill, and that is the shareholder who owns the ICP for that particular property or business or whatever.
Okay, and do all shareholders get the same amount, or does it depend on when you start paying your bills in the year, or what?
No, all shareholders get the same amount, and this year it's $240, with the maximum of 3 per customer.
Okay.
So when you're looking at big businesses that may have numerous ICPs within their business, the Trust decided long ago that they wanted to make this really fair across the board, particularly for householders, and so put a limit of 3, a cap of 3 dividends per consumer.
So if you're an investment property owner and you own 3 other houses and your own house, will you only get 3 out of the 4, or will you get all 4?
It depends whose name is on the power bill.
Yeah.
Yes, who's actually paying the power bill for that property.
And normally it is the renter who does. So
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where does the trust get its money from? Just from the dividends from Unison?
Yeah, from the dividend from Unison, which comes at the end of the financial year, and this year it has been 15.8 million, and then we distribute it accordingly.
Okay. And when you say we, who manages the money and how are the trustees chosen?
Okay, so the trustees are elected by all ICP holders within Hawke's Bay every 3 years.
Yeah.
And so it's a democratic process, you're either in or out. And sorry, what's the first part of that question?
Who are the
the trustees?
Yeah.
So they're the 5 elected trustees.
Yeah.
And we hold the money, and in various bank accounts, and we do that transparently, and that's available to the consumers, and receive the dividend at the end of the financial year, and then work through the process of what various amounts of distribution would look like according to the finances, and make the decision as to the quantum of the dividend for that particular year.
Okay. Now, normally it's over $200 that people get, sometimes $240. What is it this year, and has the cyclone affected it in any way?
Well, we're delighted to say that, again, it is $240, which it has been over the 2 subsequent years.
Yeah.
The last 3 years have been really challenging, with not only the cyclone but also the pandemic, and which created real challenges for businesses like Unison in the way of employment and employees, supply chain and the likes. However, they've managed those 2 aspects really well and been able to retain the dividend at that same amount, which we're really pleased with. And that's been the benefit of having a company that's really consumer focused.
Yeah.
They understand that the consumers are the shareholders.
Yeah.
And as trustees, we put a bit of pressure on them to actually bring that front and foremost to the directors' minds.
Because many people look forward to that cheque every year.
They do, but hey, it's not a cheque anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
well, we'll get to that.
Which has been a huge change.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
So what is the process for people to receive their payments now?
Okay, so now it is entirely direct credit.
Yeah.
And so the process is, we have a cut-off date. So anyone who holds the power account on the 30th of September will be eligible for the dividend. That's the cut-off date, and they then can go online and register their details. So when I say online, I mean onto the Power Trust website and register their details. Most power consumers have done that over the last 2 or 3 years, and if their details haven't changed, either their ICP number, their bank account, that's it, yes.
Yeah.
If they haven't changed, then there's no need to do anything. But if they have changed, or perhaps they choose to contribute their dividend to a different person and they want to change that bank account, then they need to go online and do that.
Okay. So you can sort of gift it to someone else if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, we encourage people to consider that
Yeah.
in their time, because there are some shareholders that feel that that 240 isn't that valuable to them. Well, maybe they need to consider a charity or a cyclone relief fund or a grandchild, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's that freedom of choice.
Yeah. Now, speaking about the cyclone, obviously the landscape out there has changed, literally.
Yes.
And so what if I've got a house that's category 3, but I've been paying for up until February, and then obviously there's no power going to that house. Do I get my check, and what is the situation, or my payment, dividend, sorry?
Yes, yeah, and naturally the trustees have considered this and how we're going to manage this. It's an extra complication for this year, but one that won't be overlooked. So some of those residents in that situation are now living in a different house and are paying the power account there, and they will naturally receive the dividend for that particular house. If that situation is different, maybe they're staying with friends, maybe that they are not eligible for a dividend, then they can ring the 0800 number, which is widely advertised. It's on our website at the moment and always will be, and their individual case will be discussed. Unison hold a database of all those people who've been affected like that, and they will be considered on a case-by-case basis to ensure fairness across everybody.
Okay. Now, how you mentioned publicising and that, how do you go about telling people that the money is coming, basically?
We use every avenue that we can, and social media does spread things very quickly, which is good. More and more people do turn to our website now, the Trust website, which is www.hbpct.co.nz, and the information is on there. And naturally they can also communicate with trustees or the trust through the website, emailing or phoning.
Okay. Now, what percentage of the shareholders don't collect their dividends, and what do you do with the money?
Okay, there is a percentage who don't, and that tends to vary every year depending on what population increase or decrease there has been, what new residents may not have registered that particular year. The beauty of the system with the direct credit is that each year it will pick up if that particular consumer hadn't received their dividend in the subsequent years, and it will pay it retrospectively.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not that you lose out.
No,
you get it.
You do get it, and that automatically happens with the system that's used by Link Marketing Services. So we're really pleased about that. The money stays with the trust, stays in the funds, and generates. It builds. And we can use that as in subsequent years if needed.
And what happens with the interest on that money?
That all accumulates in the fund, which is in our reserves, which we can pull on, but it always is there for consumer use and distribution.
Now, do you receive feedback from people about what the dividends mean to them and what they use it for?
Oh, we do. Yes, which is really heartening. And the use of some people with that dividend is fantastic, and they enjoy telling us about it.
Oh, good.
And we'll often get emails, or you can scroll down social media and see the feedback. And it does make a difference. For a lot of people, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, especially with the cost of living crisis at the moment. But what are some of the things that people say to you, or how they use it? Well,
particularly because it's distributed generally in November,
Christmas.
It's sort of that little pocket of money they know that they're going to get, and they can use for their children, for their families, for their Christmas celebration in any way. and it's something they can plan on. And it's also a reminder that they are the shareholders of Unison, and this company belongs to them.
Yeah. Is there any other money you get at all, or is it just solely the dividend?
Just there.
Yeah. Okay. So you exist entirely as the sort of ownership structure of Unison. Yeah.
We hold the shares on behalf of the consumers.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the ownership structure is up for its 5-yearly review, and the current model, as we've spoken about, sees dividends from Unison held in trust and then distributed to people. What is being reviewed?
Okay, so it's 100% consumer owned at this stage and has been since the creation of the trusts. But within the trustee, there's a requirement for every 5 years to have an ownership review, where the directors need to produce a report for the trustees that, for everybody, weighing up the advantages and disadvantages of continued consumer ownership. And in among that report, there may well be suggestions of what it would do for the company if there was a partial sell down or full sale of the shares, and the implications for that. But what they particularly look at is the trust a hindrance in any way for the growth of the company, and what would be the advantages, disadvantages. The directors then make a recommendation and express their views on continued 100% ownership or not.
Yeah.
And that comes into the report that gets distributed out to all consumers that they can then submit. We have the 1-month consultation period, and we really encourage people to read that report. It's being produced by PwC on behalf of the directors. Read that report, understand what it means, and make a submission accordingly.
Now, is there a possibility that Unison could be sold to offshore investors?
Well, that possibility always exists in an ownership review. And that's why I really encourage consumers to understand the implications and the options that will be presented in that report.
And there'll be quite a long process for that to happen. And how do you personally feel about that?
Well, it's part of the democratic process, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we are voted on by the consumers, and we are accountable to them.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility to listen to what they say, to listen to the director's recommendation, to understand what the report contains, and ultimately the trustees make the decision. But it's our absolute duty to listen to all sides.
Yeah. Now, there's a group called Free the Funds who believe that individual shareholders, consumers, should be allowed to sell their shares in Unison. And there's talk that could be amount to 12,000 among the 61,000 households affected. What do you think about that?
Well, the figure, there's no perfect figure that can actually be drawn at the moment, because if Unison was to be sold, there are all sorts of costs involved and valuations and the like. So that's a bit of a stab in the dark. There again, power consumers need to consider what are the implications of selling shares of the company potentially ending up in overseas hands, this local company. It's for them to draw their own conclusions for. This has been generations now have received the benefit of 100% consumer ownership, and is that there for the future, for future generations? Because there's a strong intergenerational benefit of local ownership of infrastructure.
But at the moment, it's all or nothing. If the vote is that we'll sell partially or fully, then that happens to everyone. But if I, as an individual, can't now, do you see that as an option of me being able to decide whether or not anyone else wants to, that I do want to sell my shares?
That could be an option put forward. It would be very variable under that sort of situation.
Yeah.
and it's certainly not, their idea is at this stage is not part of the ownership review.
Okay.
Because the ownership review is about hearing things in the consultation relating to the document and after its consideration.
Okay. Now, what is the process now for this review?
Okay, the process is that PwC are working on the report. They were asked to produce one back in March, it was. They have 6 months to produce that. We're expecting that report to be with the directors in early September, and they will consider it as a group and come with their recommendation to the trust. We will meet with the directors and hear their recommendation and their rationale, and that report will go out for consultation around the 14th of September.
Okay.
And that will be widely advertised, and it will be available on the trust website for anyone to access. There's a 1 month consultation period, and then there'll be a public meeting on
I think
the 10th of November.
Yes,
The 10th of November. There's a lot of dates floating around at the moment. The 10th of November there'll be a public meeting for the trustees to hear anyone who wants to speak to their submission, and then on the 17th of November another public meeting where the trustees will announce their decision.
Because you mentioned this democratic process, but you also a shareholder, a consumer, and that. What do you think is the best option? Or don't
For
you
me
want to say?
personally, well, no, I can say personally, and because my thoughts come with my profile, is that I support intergenerational benefit
So keep
of
the
this
status quo,
locally owned infrastructure,
Yeah.
which I personally think this community hold dearly.
Yeah.
But that's my individual
Opinion,
thought,
yeah.
and I've always been transparent about that and been voted on accordingly.
Yeah. Now, as you say, you've been with the trust for a while, and you've been chairperson now for a while.
6 years.
6 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What are your reflections on the role?
Oh, this has been, I suppose I came in quite green in 2002, but it's just been a fascinating journey for me. This company has grown so much, but in my mind, extremely sensibly. They have made investments with their subsidiaries that are all related to the electricity sector that have added value to the company. And I think you need to understand that the lines revenue for Unison is the core business, but it's very regulated by the Commerce Commission and limited as to how much profit it can make. So the value to the consumer is in the subsidiaries and the unregulated side of the business. And they've made some really sensible, sustainable decisions around those subsidiaries that they've purchased. And while the turmoil of the last 3 years hasn't necessarily been able to show the potential of those subsidiaries, their growth path going forward is very promising.
Okay, now, if the trust stays as it is, do you see yourself putting yourself up for re-election, and how long do you see yourself going in this role?
No, well, this will be, the next elections are in next year, and that's the end of my 3-year
So you only allowed 3 years?
Yes, so no, I'll definitely be standing down at that election, yes. And, but with some amazing experiences and learnings and memories.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Well, Diana Kirton, thank you for your time, and good luck for the future.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be with you again.
Yeah,
Andrew.
excellent. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.